With the release of Donkey Kong Country 2, Donkey Kong was at its peak in terms of hype. With the release, there has been 2 big games, 3 spin-off titles, a TV show, and a lot of ad campaigns and stuff. But with the release of the N64, what would Rare do with Donkey Kong? Well, in the year of 1996, they gave him one final big SNES title for the holiday seasons. Donkey Kong Country 3, Dixie Kong's Double Trouble. Now, this game is considered the black sheep of the series. It's barely talked about, not hoping that it released during the time when the N64 released, so a lot of people are not really interested in the SNES around this time. I don't know what people's full reaction is to this, but it was pretty mixed from what I've seen. Like, it is Donkey Kong, but there is something off about it from what I've seen. I think one of the main reasons is probably because with Donkey Kong Country 3, this was made by a completely different team at Rare. With some of the people, like the main designers of the previous games like Greg Mills, didn't return for this game. This is also the first and only game that has Dixie Kong as the leading character, with a brand new partner with her named Kiddy Kong. I should also mention this is that when the commercial came out, for some reason they labeled the game as Kiddy Kong's game, even though the title clearly states that it's Dixie Kong's main lead. And before I start, I have to say something real quick. Why do a lot of people hate Kiddy Kong? I've seen several YouTubers and several Nintendo guys constantly saying how much they dislike Kiddy Kong. Like, yeah, he's pretty derping looking, but I really don't see why he's in the Hall of Shame when it comes to Nintendo characters. But that's not really important right now, so with everything out of the way, let's get started. So after the events of DKC 2, Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong decided to go out for a little vacation time. However, as the days go by, Dixie Kong then realized that DK and Diddy Kong never return, so then she heads off to the Northern Cremisphere. At the Cremisphere, Dixie Kong finds herself at Funky Kong's workshop. Here, Dixie Kong can rent a vehicle that she can use to drive around the area. Along the way, she takes Kiddy Kong, her little cousin, with her. And thus Dixie and Kiddy Kong set out to find Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Now, despite the story being very simple like the previous games, the stakes in this game aren't really as high as those two. Especially with the second one, where the stakes were extremely high because Donkey Kong was the main hero, and without him, the Kremlings could take over the area. Now, honestly, you really don't play Donkey Kong for the story, it's just something I just noticed. But anyway, so for the gameplay, it's pretty much like Donkey Kong Country 1 and 2. It has the elevation of DKC 2, but it's a lot more open compared to it being crowded. The level design in this game is a lot more loose compared to DKC 2, a lot more similar to the first one, honestly. Now, not to say it's a bad thing, because for what this game does, it's pretty interesting, because for every level, it tries something a bit new for each one of them. Dixie Kong pretty much plays exactly like the previous one. She has a special hover move she can do with her hair. Kiddy Kong is kind of like Donkey Kong, but slightly lighter, in my opinion. Kiddy Kong is a powerful little infant who can attack enemies with ease. The only thing I can think of is the adjusted version of the throw mechanic. So if Dixie Kong throws Kiddy Kong in the air, he can do this special ground pound move that can find secrets. If Kiddy Kong can throw Dixie Kong in the air, he can throw her in high places where they can both travel through. So if you played the previous game, it's mostly the same. You go through various levels, try to collect items, and get to the goal. Although what's different this time, instead of it being a roulette wheel, is that it just gets you to the end. There's no bonus area you can do. Dixie Kong doesn't even bring out her electric guitar like the last game. Kind of a shame though. So for the collectibles and the levels, they're pretty much the same. There's Kong letters, there's bonus areas, and the return of the DK coins. Although collecting the DK coins are very different compared to the last one, because instead it's being guarded by this Kremling named Coin with a K. So in order to defeat Coin with a K, you're going to need to roll an iron barrel behind him. This is obviously an interesting different kind of way to collect coins, because in the last one it's pretty damn hidden, but in this one it's kind of like a puzzle in a way to try to defeat this enemy. Another thing that's new is the brand new world map. In the previous games it's pretty much a linear map, but in this it's semi-open-ended, even though it's really not. When you start the game, you have Dixie Kong swimming through the ocean to get to the island. This is when Funky Kong gets you a boat. And as you travel through various levels and defeat the bosses, you're able to get materials to upgrade your vehicle to go through even higher places and such. Oh god. And I'll be completely honest, out of all the boss designs in all the Donkey Kong Country games, I feel like DKC3 aged the worst. Honestly, with this barrel enemy, it kinda makes me think of one of Scott Cawthon's early work, Chipper and Sons. You know, the game that had those weird, uncanny characters that eventually inspired to make a successful media franchise. Now, for the level design, it's pretty much the same as other games, but it's not really as challenging as 2. It's a bit more easy, but it's weirdly not engaging. I really know how to describe it. I played these games back to back, so I guess I'm a bit tired of Donkey Kong Country for now, but for what this game is, it's pretty solid. And as for the trademark Animal Buddies, well, this is when things get more mixed, in my opinion. So unfortunately in this game, Rambi the Rhino does not return in this game. Instead, he's replaced by Ellie the Elephant. She is nowhere near as strong as Rambi. In fact, the only thing she can do is just pick up barrels and such and shoot water. There was also this annoying stealth level where you have to play as Ellie, because since she's an elephant, she's afraid of mice. There's also this one where she turns barrel into floaties for her. With Rambi absent in this game, Unguard is the only character that actually went through the entire Donkey Kong trilogy, and he pretty much plays exactly the same. Same with Squawks and same with Squitter. There's really not that much I could talk about with these characters. They pretty much play like Donkey Kong Country 2. Now I know I'm harping on this game a bit, but honestly there is some stuff I do like about this game, like the unique gimmicks they add in this game. I do remember a good handful of these levels, like this one where you're climbing up on this rope that's currently on fire, which kind of makes me think of that scene from Home Alone 2. There's also this cool little sleigh area where you're going through the sewers and such. It's pretty fun. And lastly, I should mention there's these little mini games you can do, where you can face off with Cranky Kong, which is the only time you actually appear in the game, to do some little awards. There's really not that much to talk about, but it's a simple and fun distraction. Now, graphically and aesthetically, despite some characters aging poorly in my opinion, like the bosses, like I said before, I feel like the environments hold up really well. Like, look at this water level. I feel like this is the best looking water level in the Donkey Kong Country trilogy. I feel like my favorite area in this game is probably the bridge area, especially with that reflection on the mountainside. It is pretty cool looking. And as for the sound design, well, it's a bit more cartoonish compared to the previous games, but for what it is, it gives this game its own identity. Now, unlike the previous games, this game is not composed by David Wise, but instead a new composer named Evelyn Fisher. And for her first spin on Donkey Kong, it's honestly a pretty good soundtrack. It might have lost some atmosphere like the previous games had, but for what it is, it's really catchy and really upbeat. If you're looking for a simple platformer or a really fun time, I highly recommend trying out Donkey Kong Country 3. Now, with everything out of the way, time to wrap up the story. Now, as Dixie Kong and Kiddy Kong travel out through the island, they find themselves in this weird mansion where the robot named Chaos intervenes. After a few bumps on the head, Chaos is finally defeated, where it's revealed that King K. Rool, under a mad scientist persona, was controlling it the entire time. He never really had a presence in this game until this point. But anyway, so you defeat K. Rool by destroying his jetpack, and then he goes down, saving Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong. Now, there's also a secret ending you can get in this game, where if you go through the island and do these little puzzle areas, you can unlock these banana birds. Collecting all of them will unlock the secret ending where you just literally drop a giant egg on K. Rool. That's it. In the last game, you're watching an entire island sink to the bottom of the ocean as you look at this beautiful sunset. In this game, you just drop an egg on this guy's head. And that concludes Donkey Kong Country 3, and overall, it's a pretty good game. It may have some issues there and there, and I feel like it's somewhat forgettable, but for what it is, it's a pretty solid adventure. If you're very curious on this game, you can play on the Nintendo Switch Online, which is how I recorded footage for this game. Or if you have a GBA, you can play the GBA port of this game. Yeah, it's pretty much exactly like the previous games. It has all my thoughts and feelings about the previous ones. It's a pretty good version of the SNES title. It may not look as good, but it's still a really good port. However, with this version of the game, it is completely different compared to the other ones because the entire soundtrack is brand new, composed by David Wise. And honestly, I'd say the soundtrack for this game is neither better or worse. It mostly comes off with taste. Although it does give out a new mood for certain levels, like the first one, for example. But anyway, so that was the entirety of the Donkey Kong trilogy. As DKC3 was the final game Rare has ever made for Donkey Kong that was a 2D platformer. But it was not their last platformer, because there was one more big game on the N64. And when I mean big, I mean big. So to conclude the DK marathon, we're gonna be doing Donkey Kong 64. Although considering that this might be a big undertaking, I might throw in another game that's not Donkey Kong related into the mix, just so you can have a little appetizer. But that'll do for today, so thank you for watching and I'll see you later. Bye bye!